Before we begin, I want to just give you some figures, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of when we look at suicide rates in the youth in our country. More than 35 students end their life every day in India. By the time this session is over, a student would have taken his life in our country. In the last 1 year alone, there have been more students who've died by suicide than farmers by suicide. And if you look at the sheer numbers, it's a huge, huge difference. If you look into that, there is a larger range because the gender is skewed even in these numbers, where young women students are about 8% more to take their lives by suicide than male students. But the sheer number in terms of the students that we lose to suicide every year is now alarming. I want to cut across immediately to Dr. Harsh Shetty. We've reached a point, Mr. Shetty, where you have to take it by the jugular. Um, just sheer numbers, astounding. 35 students ending their life every day in our country.
India is in the midst of a rapid social change. You sometimes type happy birthday to a friend on the Facebook, you don't know that he's passed away. Anger, angst, and alienation is a norm, apart from all the good things that are happening. Emotional contact time in the family has gone down. Family time has gone down. And an aspirational India is moving up. But the mental health is not looked at. Let us look at NEP, National Education Policy, the foundation for building a new India. There's nothing about mental health there. Let us look at the curriculum framework. There's nothing about mental health there. You know, we are in the midst of a mental health epidemic. And when there's an epidemic, you need a campaign. You can't have only psychiatrists and psychologists lifting the mental health of the country. We need a campaign. It's an epidemic we need to look at, and that is something that is very important. The young are ready to talk, but there are no listeners. The number of professionals are very few. The market is big, and there are many quacks. So as of now, as big as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, as big as the COVID epidemic, we need to look at mental health in that scale, in that space. And that is important. Though we can say love affairs, exam, parents, poverty, 1 out of 4 people who die in India are daily wage laborers. NCRB. One out of 3 people who die in India is because of family problems. So there's a crisis. And we need to look at it holistically. We can't build a vertical building or an intervention for youth, for the young, for the old, or for the infants. Age of onset of suicide has gone down. Age of the first episode of depression has gone down. Age of the first sexual intercourse has gone down. Age of the first drug intake has gone down. Age of the first intake of alcohol has gone down. And age of juvenile offense has gone down. It's an epidemic which will also influence productivity, economics, and physical illnesses too. Lastly, it's important to understand that suicide is not the only indicator for mental health burden. The fights on the roads, the wars among people, the murders and deaths across have a mental health root. So it's important that we are in the middle of a visible mental health epidemic, and campaigns are the key.
Look, you're very right, because we're looking at an epidemic proportion, especially where you look at the age group between 18 to 35. Like I pointed out, the numbers now are alarming. We need a policy, which is anti-suicide policy, and the government has come up with one right now. But is it enough is the question, but I know you're shaking your head. But I just want to bring in, because I just want
Just
to...
a point, sorry.
Yeah.
We ignored mental health at the time of COVID, both the center and all the states. It was an opportunity to build the mental health system at that point of time, but we missed the bus.
I want to bring in Mr. Ram Krishan Verma. I want to introduce him to our viewers. Ram Krishan Verma is the founder, managing director, and the academic head of a coaching institute in Kota. I don't know how many of you have seen what the coaching institutes in Kota look like. You must have seen, if you saw Kota factory, how thousands of coaching institutes, and Mr. Verma is not very happy of the way I'm describing it, but thousands of coaching institutes in Rajasthan, Kota, possibly manufacturing engineers. But the kind of pressure it puts on these young students and young minds is astounding. वर्मा जी, अगर आप देखें जो आंकड़े हैं, अभी तक साल भी पूरा नहीं हुआ है वर्मा जी, 27 बच्चों ने अपनी जान ली है कोटा राजस्थान में। सर आपसे सवाल।
हेलो, मैं सबसे पहले तो इंडिया टुडे को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि उन्होंने एक बहुत ही सेंसिटिव मैटर पे, जिसके बारे में जनरली बात करना, बच्चों के साथ भी इस तरह की बात करना को थोड़ा सा अजीब सा माना जाता है, और मैं इसलिए भी धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि मुझे इन्होंने बुलाया इसके बारे में बात करने के लिए। मैं थोड़ा सा कोटा के बारे में भी बोलना चाहूँगा। वैसे तो लोग कहीं ना कहीं से इसके बारे में सुनते ही हैं, जानते ही हैं। मैंने खुद 95 में कोटा में अपना कैरियर स्टार्ट किया था, और अभी 28 साल पूरे हो चुके, ये 29th ईयर चल रहा है। और इस टीचिंग कैरियर में पहले मैं 6 साल तक टीचर रहा, टीचर तो अभी तक भी हूँ, और पिछले 22 साल से रेजोनेंस संस्था को मैं हेड कर रहा हूँ। इन 28 ईयर्स में स्टूडेंट्स को अलग अलग बैकग्राउंड से आकर के पढ़ाई करते हुए देखा है, और बच्चों का जो बदलाव है, उनके बिहेवियरल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, उनके अंदर जो एस्पिरेशनल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, कई तरह की चीज़ें बच्चों के अंदर मैंने देखी हैं शुरू से लेके अब तक। अगर बच्चों का थोड़ा सा कंपेयर किया जाए, क्योंकि इस कंपैरिजन से अपने को आइडिया लग सकता है कि प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है और सॉल्यूशन कैसे निकल सकते हैं। तो मैं जस्ट ऐसे कुछ बच्चों का एग्जांपल लेता हूं कि कई बच्चे गांव से भी आते हैं, उनके साथ कई सारी और दूसरी तरह की प्रॉब्लम्स भी होती है, लेकिन उनका एक ड्राइविंग फोर्स होता है, एक मोटिवेशन होता है कि मुझे ये चीज़ अचीव करनी है, और उस गोल को अचीव करने के लिए वो पॉजिटिवली अपने आप को उस डायरेक्शन में ले जाते हैं। धीरे धीरे समय के साथ ये हुआ है, और ख़ास तौर से कोविड और उसकी वजह से ये हुआ है कि बच्चों का जो एक तो डिस्ट्रैक्शंस है वो बहुत सारा हो गया है, डीफोकस्ड हो गए हैं। सोशल मीडिया और इन सब चीज़ों की वजह से बच्चे का जो एक पढ़ाई के प्रति फोकस होता था, पढ़ाई में जो उसका टाइम लगता था, अभी उसका टाइम कहीं और भी खर्च होता है, जिसकी वजह से उसको जो मेन काम होता है उसका टाइम भी उसका कहीं ना कहीं किल हो जाता है, और उसकी वजह से उसको ऐसा लगता है कि मेरा ये चीज छूट गई, मेरा वो
पर
छूट गया।
वर्मा जी, एक बच्चे को जो एक ऐसे एटमॉस्फेयर में है कि आपने बात की जो बच्चे विलेजेस से आते हैं, ग्रामीण क्षेत्र से आते हैं, इतना प्रेशर होता है उन बच्चों पे, उनके जो पेरेंट्स हैं उन्होंने लोन लिया हुआ है, फाइनेंशियल बर्डन है। आप हमें पहले बता रहे थे कि अपना आटा खुद लेके आते हैं, अपना खाना खुद बनाते हैं। इन बच्चों को कुछ तो आउटलेट चाहिए। अगर आप इनको कहेंगे कि ये लोग फोकस नहीं है, तो हमारी अप्रोच थोड़ी गलत नहीं है वर्मा जी?
नहीं नहीं, मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूं कि उनका फोकस नहीं है, मैं बोल रहा हूं कि बच्चों का जैसे जैसे ये टेक्नोलॉजिकल युग और ये सारी चीजें इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी के जमाने में इतना ओवरफ्लो है इंफॉर्मेशंस का कि बच्चे इजीली इधर उधर डिस्ट्रैक्ट भी होते हैं। और जैसा मैंने कहा कि एक कुछ बच्चों का एग्जाम्पल लिया कि बच्चे ऐसे ऐसे बच्चे भी पढ़ करके आगे गए हैं जो जिनके पेरेंट्स खुद उनके लिए सामान लेकर आते थे हर वीक, वो खुद अपने हाथ से खाना बना करके और अपना जैसे तैसे करके काम चलाते थे, और पढ़ाई ही उनका मेन फोकस होती थी। अभी बच्चों के लिए जो प्रेशर पॉइंट्स हैं, एक प्रेशर पॉइंट जैसा आपने कहा कि एक फाइनेंशियल बर्डन एक बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर पॉइंट होता है, वो रहता है। बच्चों को एक गिल्ट फील होती है कि भाई मेरे पेरेंट्स ने ये लोन लिया है या मेरा खेत बेच करके उन्होंने मुझे पढ़ाया है। मैं हम कोचिंग की तरफ से जो कंट्रीब्यूशन वो भी आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि कई बच्चों को कोचिंग अपने हिसाब से कई तरह की स्कॉलरशिप्स, डिस्काउंट्स वगैरह वगैरह भी उनको प्रोवाइड करते हैं, जिससे कि बच्चे के ऊपर फाइनेंशियल बर्डन नहीं आए। लेकिन हाँ, जितना भी बर्डन होता है कुछ तो बर्डन बच्चे के ऊपर रहता है, और उसका प्रेशर कहीं ना कहीं उसको पढ़ाई के लिए डिस्टर्ब तो करता ही है।
तो उस प्रेशर को कैसे रिलीज किया जाए कि हम उस बच्चे को खो ना दें? मैं उस बात पे वापस बात पे आऊंगी, पर मैं चरित जग्गी, आई वांट टू इंट्रोड्यूस चरित जग्गी to you ladies and gentlemen. He was a journalist, then he became a social entrepreneur. Now he runs a platform for content creation and for the young. And he was getting a lot of feedback, and what's really interesting is accidentally Jaggi realized that the youth in our country is facing the biggest mental health crisis? Why, Jaggi?
Thank you. Check. Yeah. Thank you for having me and honored to be here. We actually started We the Young with a vision that we want to put out stories of young change makers and we want to give a platform to young people to voice their stories. What we didn't realize was that almost all the stories that we'd get would be mental health stories because that is how much young people were yearning to be heard. They were yearning that there should be someone who should listen to them. And when they got this outlet, I had emails, I had messages, I had DMs, I had people who would themselves record their own stories, talk about what they're going through, because there was just no one who was listening to them. Parents are finding it very hard to decode and demystify very complex issues that young people are going through today. Just out of curiosity, if I were to ask anybody over here that what is the National Mental Health Helpline number, I'm sure nobody would know that.
You know, that was going to be my question. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm sure if I would say, like, what's the national emergency, like your ambulance and your police, everyone knows that number because we are taught that from a very young age. So why is it and when will it be that our education system starts, like, making this a part of our curriculum? So many of schools in tier 1 cities as well, including like I went to a good school in Delhi, and we had counselors, and for the longest time, nobody knew who these counselors are. They would be in one room, in a setup somewhere, and nobody knew who a counselor is. Nobody knew what to speak to a counselor about. Why do they exist? They would mostly be substituted in classes when teachers would go absent. So I feel like there's such a dearth of awareness, and even when awareness has come in, it has left these wounds open. A lot of young people are scrolling online on social media platforms and discovering that they possibly are going through something. But what happens then? We don't follow up on those. There's so much awareness, there's so much content on mental health online.
So people are talking, we are not listening, or we are pretending not to listen.
Absolutely, and we're not making the genuine effort to sit with a young person and understand, boss, kya dikkat hai?
And troubleshoot for them.
Yeah.
And solve their problem.
Absolutely.
You know, I'll bring in Dr. Shetty back into this conversation because Dr. Shetty, we spoke about the country having a suicide watch policy. But if you read the policy, it's just not enough, A. Now, how do we ensure that the government fosters a culture of open dialogue where we can have children who will come out, not just express themselves, but know they'll be able to seek help?
I think let's not wait for the government. If I look at the quota centers of the IITs, let IITs have mental health camps as big as Mood Indigo, as big as a Tech Fest. Let us imagine a scene. How many of you have attempted suicides? Put your hands up.
He's asking how many of you ever contemplated suicide?
Whatever, or even attempted. Now, the point is, if I see a scenario, a mental health camp repeatedly happening in these centers where all the centers come together and the people who go to the camps are the owners of the centers with their spouses and the kids, stigma breaks. IITs also need to have mental health camps as big as those festivals. And the IIT director goes with his family and does his mental health checkup. That's how the stigma breaks. Giving theory lectures and giving ad hoc answers after suicide will not help. Number 3, what is also very important, my dear friend, is corporates don't have a mental health policy. Does India today have a mental health policy? No. So the third important thing is having a mental health policy. The fourth is counselors in these centers are not tick mark guys or even IITs. Counselors are not supposed to sit in the rooms which you just mentioned. They are supposed to reach out to students in the classroom. Talking about anger, talking about love. When they talk about emotions, the kids will come back with an unhealthy issues and seek help. High-risk children will be identified early. Counselors are supposed to go to the hostels, not sit in the rooms, because any illness that has stigma, you have to reach out. Any illness where there is no stigma, the person will come to you, I have malaria, I have fever,
Right.
I have chest pain. Government has ignored mental health policy for a long time, state as well as center. We need to understand that if you ignore mental health policy and mental health work and mental interventions, you are going to bring down the economic productivity of the country. You're going to have lots of social upheavals. You're going to have a lot of family issues. And ultimately, this affects each and every segment of change. So just a suicide policy will not work, but campaign as big as Swachh Bharat, campaign as big as COVID, and campaign as big as... So each one of us have to be part of it. Yoga has to be included, Vipassana has to be included.
And why a campaign as big as Swachh Bharat? Why a campaign as big as COVID? Because once again, look at the sheer numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time this session is over, a young student between the age of 18 to 28 would have taken his life. That's what the data suggests. In a day, we are talking about 35 young people who take their lives in this country on a daily basis. Do tell us if this is not an epidemic. But Verma ji, मैं आपको फिर से इस कॉन्वर्सेशन में लाऊंगी. हम बोल सकते हैं कि फोकस नहीं है बच्चों का, थोड़े वीक हैं इमोशनली बच्चे, पर वो बात अलग है वर्मा जी. एज ओनर ऑफ कंपनी जो कोटा में एक कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट चलाते हैं, आप अपनी तरफ से कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं बच्चों को? अगर आपको लगता है आपके यहाँ पर सुसाइड वॉच है, मेंटल हेल्थ अगर आपको लगता है कोई बच्चा स्ट्रगल कर रहा है, चाहे आर्थिक प्रेशर है, फैमिली प्रेशर है, पढ़ाई का प्रेशर है, इन्वायरमेंटल प्रेशर है, क्योंकि अगर आप देखें वहां पर एक सिटी सी कंस्ट्रक्ट हो गई है और उधर ही बच्चे आते हैं और उधर ही रहते हैं, तो आप कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, कैसे काउंसल करते हैं उन्हें?
पिछले 4-5 सालों में इस डायरेक्शन में बहुत सारा काम हुआ है कोटा के अंदर. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ राजस्थान, सिटी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, इनकी तरफ से भी काफ़ी काम हुआ है और कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स की तरफ से भी काफ़ी काम हुआ है. काम इन द सेंस कि एक तो बच्चों के साथ में फैकल्टी और स्टूडेंट इनके बीच की जो रिलेशनशिप है, वो रिलेशनशिप सिर्फ टीचर और स्टूडेंट की नहीं कि टीचर अपना नॉलेज डिलीवर करते हैं, टीचर अपने आप में गार्जियन का रोल भी प्ले करता है. मैं खुद अपनी जब पूरी टीम को एड्रेस करता हूं तो उनको बोलता हूं कि एक टीचर के 4 रोल हैं. एक तो टीचर जो उनको नॉलेज ट्रांसफर करता है, एक फ्रेंड जो उनकी बात को सुनने के लिए रेडी रहता है, और एक फादर मदर का रोल भी उसको प्ले करना होता है क्योंकि वो घर से बाहर है, तो वही उसके लिए सब कुछ है. अलग अलग रोल्स में एक फैकल्टी अपने आप को बच्चे के साथ देखता है. बच्चों को जो जिस बैच में टीचर पढ़ाते हैं उनकी लिस्ट फैकल्टी मेंबर्स को दी जाती है, उसमें नंबर्स भी होते हैं, वो बच्चों के साथ में इंटरेक्ट भी करते हैं. पेरेंट टीचर मीटिंग भी होती है. और इसके अलावा फन डे, एक फन डे का कंसेप्ट चालू हुआ है वहां पे कि भाई वीक में एक दिन फन डे के रूप में रहेगा जिसमें बच्चों को कुछ नहीं पढ़ाया जाएगा और उस पीरियड के अंदर जो उनकी इच्छा होगी
वर्मा जी,
वो
जब
करेंगे.
आप बात करते हैं, आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, जो बच्चे अच्छा करना चाहते हैं उनके लिए बहुत सारे हीरोज होते हैं, जो विनर्स होते हैं हमारी कंट्री में उनके लिए बहुत सारे हीरोज होते हैं, जो टेक्निकली हम देखते हैं फेलियर या लूजर्स, उनके लिए कोई नहीं होता है. तो आप उनको कैसे मोटिवेट करते हैं जो स्ट्रगल कर रहे होते हैं?
तो उन बच्चों को, जैसे मेरा इतना लंबा एक्सपीरियंस हो गया, मैंने देखा है कि इस पूरे एक्सपीरियंस के अंदर ऐसे बच्चे भी हैं जो आईआईटी में सेलेक्ट नहीं हुए लेकिन अदरवाइज वो कुछ ना कुछ उन्होंने अच्छा अचीव किया है. उन बच्चों को हम बुलाते हैं, उनकी मोटिवेशन क्लास रखते हैं, उन बच्चों को वो देखते हैं और देख करके अपने आप को उनकी जगह पाते हैं. ऐसे बच्चे भी हैं जिन्होंने आईआईटी से पढ़ाई
तो
की.
कोचिंग सेंटर में रहकर आप ये बोल सकते हैं कि देखिए इंजीनियर बनना जिंदगी में सब कुछ नहीं
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बोलते हैं बच्चों को. और इवन इंजीनियर बनने के बाद दूसरे सेक्टर में भी उसने काम किया, ये भी बोलते हैं. आपने कोटा
किस सेक्टर में सक्सेसफुल हो सकते हैं?
यस बिल्कुल. और जो बच्चे आईआईटी से पढ़ के निकले उन्होंने भी अपना टेक्नोलॉजी का काम नहीं किया. ऐसे बच्चे भी हैं जो एक्टर भी बने, डायरेक्टर भी बने, पेंटर भी बने, हर तरह की फील्ड में बच्चों ने अपना हाथ आजमाया है. तो बच्चे को ये सिर्फ कि भाई एक पढ़ाई के लिए कुछ ना कुछ तो डिग्री का अपना काम करना होता है, लेकिन उसका पैशन समय के साथ आइडेंटिफाई होता है और हो सकता है कि वो जिसमें उसने डिग्री ली है उसके अलावा वो अपने पैशन को बाद में चेस करता है और उसमें सक्सेसफुल होता है.
मेंटल हेल्थ एंड द यंग, when you look at that, especially the kind of feedback that you get on your outlet, the question I want to ask you is, what do you see? Because we are talking about students here. Yes, there's educational pressure, there's financial pressure, there's guilt associated with that, but there are other reasons as well where the youth of the country do take their life. It's not just associated solely with education.
That's absolutely correct. I think we've talked enough here about academic pressure, but if you look at the NCRB data, it cites love affairs as being a significant issue in young people taking their lives. If I'm not wrong, it's the second leading factor. So I feel, why is there no conversation about what a young person goes through when they have a heartbreak? It's a very significant mental health issue, and it's also a category that has exceedingly performed in terms of impact on our platform. It affects a large section of our audience, and we reach close to 2 to 3 million people in a month. And there
2
are
3 million people
yes, and the most they
between the
engage-
age group of 18 to 35.
Exactly. And the most they engage with is on content on how to deal. I mean, the most popular topic that we have on our platform is what to do after a breakup. And that tells you that so many young people, and not everyone has access to therapy, right? And this affects people across the spectrum, be it in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. These are very interpersonal issues that every young person goes through. So I feel like there are very limited conversations, even on social media, about how do young people deal with issues other than academic pressures. And in my observation, this is what I've realized, and I felt that from a very young age, be it, and especially for men, it's like we have minimized struggles of every young person by saying, लड़की है क्या, रोता नहीं है, रोता क्यों है, कोई बात नहीं, कोई एक छोड़ के चले गया, एक जाएगा, दूसरा आएगा. We constantly minimize struggles of young people and then expect that they should
Right.
be okay with
You
it.
know, it's interesting because you said ladki hai kya, just, you know, there are figures within figures, there's data within data, and where it comes to the young, females are more prone to take their own lives by suicide than men, and the difference comes to over 8% per 10 lakh. But I want to, you know, bring Dr. Shetty for a last word in. Dr. Shetty, we can talk about, you know, getting into a cohesive policy where, you know, suicide watch, mental health is concerned. But there are many parents here, there are many those who have loved ones, who are young, who are struggling, and possibly, you know, they don't come up with their issues right up front. What advice would you give?
Every family should screen their children for mental health issues every month. Inside a family, you can do it yourself. Every classes and every IT should screen young boys and girls for mental health issues, because children today are very brittle emotionally. Number 3, which is very important also, is have campaigns, never die for a guy. There are many exams worth living for and no exams worth dying for. There are many guys worth living for and no guys worth dying for. If the government can screen people for malaria, dengue, and we have a massive tuberculosis eradication program, why not mental health?
Dr. Shetty, just one last question where the time's up. If today, you know, because there is so much stigma attached to suicide, you asked a question, not one hand went up, where you asked how many of you have possibly contemplated suicide. I want to ask you, if tomorrow somebody is standing on the cusp of making that move, that 2-minute conversation they can have with themselves, which will not make them take that step. What is that 2-minute conversation they can have with themselves?
Viktor Frankl said in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, a woman called him many times at night and her life was saved. And he asked her, what sentence of mine helped you? And he said, nothing. The fact that you listened to me helped me. I think that is extreme. Every father or the mother here, just sit down and remember, when the times are less, steal time and don't ask your marks. Don't ask when is the exam. Just say, kaise ho yaar? Kaise ho yaar? And let the children also ask.
And if
"Kaise ho
someone
yaar?"
finds themselves painted in a corner and all alone, what is it that they tell themselves then at their lowest?
If they're really lost in a corner, rock the boat. Don't wait for an astrologer. Don't wait for a Dadaji from the village. Take him to the friendly neighborhood psychologists or psychiatrists instantly. He might complain against you, but rock the boat. Today we have not built mental health systems yet. It's being built. So all of you here, and everybody listening to this show, remember, you are a mental health missionary in your own right. If you take action, you may not be popular, but you'll save somebody's life.
Thank you. I appreciate all three of you gentlemen for coming here and joining us, educating us. Appreciate it. Thank you. You want to say something? No? Okay, I thought you wanted to say. All right, okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise a warm applause for our panelists this evening. You have a question, sir. We're running out of time, but okay, maybe can we get one question in?
Just give us a moment. We'll get a
Yeah,
mic
we'll get
also.
a mic to you. You know, because the topic is so sensitive, we're running out of time, but we will allow you a question, sir. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, question for Dr. Shetty. Sir, you said that every one of us or every youngster, we need to go through mental health checkup or mental health on monthly, quarterly basis. Just to give you my 1-minute introduction, I'm author of a book called Define Your Orbit. And you touch the element that if we have purpose-driven life, I think a lot of things can change. So do you have a framework of what kind of audit one has to do on monthly basis, not medically, but physically
health.
or in conversation? That's
What's
the
the
question.
boxes you tick in? What's the
Yeah,
boxes
that's the
that you
question.
cross?
So as parents, like I have 2 kids,
Meaninglessness is the
22
cause
years
of
old.
depression. Meaninglessness is the cause of depression.
Correct.
We have PHQ-9, a question which you can use with the young. We have SRQ, also a question we can use with the young. But don't wait for them to come to your clinic. Use it on your breakfast table, each one of you, and all those listening to me. Let them take. You ask everybody, no? आपको बुखार आती है क्या? पेट दुखता है क्या? Let them take. Initially, they will see it as fun. They might be angry at you, but tell them, we told you this, and that might save somebody's life. Number 2, there are many people who want to die, and they don't tell you. All those people who are crying may not always be depressed, but all those who are depressed may not choose to cry. And you need to really dig, even if you become unpopular, till you, and if you have to err on the side, is he stressed? Is he depressed? Is he suicidal? Not so. Err on the side of having a mental health checkup. All executive health checkups in every hospital should have a compulsory mental health checkup.
All right. And with that, you know, let's take that home because there are a couple of self-help tips that have also been given. But yes, we're going to just leave you with that figure. 35 suicides between the age group of 18 to 35 daily. Just chew on that figure. Is this not an epidemic? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.